retirement in the army. Well, so the army is it's a professionals. Every soldier is pretty much a professional. It's very highly skilled. Why do you think that there's so many people that are veterans that are homeless, they're struggling, the lives are falling apart, not supported by by their peers or their families or friends or the government? Why do you think there's just a lot of people that are struggle after being in the forces?
Yeah, I mean, I think the armed forces has changed over the last 50 years of my life. It used to be a vocation. You signed up and you could expect to stay for 22 years, whether or not you were promoted in your regiment. And you were proud of that. It became your substitute family. It became your home. And we had garrison towns where generation after generation of soldiers had
Mm.
existed. And so the civil society that surrounded that, the the Salians, the clubs, the support systems were all there in those garrison towns. The military hospitals, they were all there. All that's gone on the basis of saving money and accountancy, and it's almost impossible to get it back. And so we got a huge. Okay.
Okay, so you're mentioning differences with garrison towns in the past.
Yeah, we used to have garrison towns like Aldershot and Colchester, where you had generations of soldiers, and you had lots of societies that had been built up by the previous generations. You had clubs, you had support structures,
Mhm.
you had wives' clubs, you had all the aunties and uncles that you didn't the pseudo aunties and uncles that belonged there. And so all the structures were there. People didn't need to go outside. They didn't need to go to social services. They had people to talk to about their problems who understood their problems from their personal involvement in those problems.
Mhm.
Um, and you had the regiment to fall back on, the associations that provided support after people had left too.
Okay.
With the government continually cutting back on the armed forces and breaking them up and restructuring them, the armed forces now is not so much a lifestyle or a vocation, it's more of a job. So people do it, they do it for a short period of time, they move on. It's cheaper to train new soldiers than to keep old ones. And that structure has broken down. But the army also used to provide housing for the families and support structures afterwards. But so did the government. Now, the housing issue, as far as veterans are concerned, isn't really just a veterans issue. It's a national housing issue. And housing in the UK, homelessness in the UK, is a massive problem that can be cured. If we look at the Finnish example of housing first, and then the social problems and dealing with them after you've housed people, they've reduced their housing down to homelessness problem down to almost zero. And we could do that. So rather than sitting in judgment of people that can't shelter themselves and find a home and find an address and get a job, first you provide the housing, then you worry about the rent, then you worry about them getting a job. And some won't be able to cope, and some will always be a problem, but you will get rid of the fact that people are dying on the streets and living in cardboard boxes and causing huge problems with health costs and everything else that goes with it. I mean, the classic example is Los Angeles in the USA, where they've got streets full of people who could be housed by the richest country in the world, but they won't house them because they think it's their fault. Sometimes bad things happen to good people, and sometimes bad things happen to bad people too. But housing first, shelter first, and then worry about the social problems afterwards. And soldiers and ex-soldiers are part of that much bigger picture.
Mm. And you're quite involved with the veterans in Northern Ireland.
Yeah.